the level of carbon dioxide in your blood will build up to the point where it'll knock you out. Knock you out. And God has designed us emotionally to be dependent on spiritual breathing. Carbon dioxide is a waste product of everyday life in a fallen world. It's how God has designed us, and we've got to blow it off or else it's going to make you sick. And you have to inhale oxygen after exhaling carbon dioxide. Do you know what triggers respiration? It's not a hunger or craving for oxygen. It's a buildup of carbon dioxide. That's what triggers respiration. The reason that your diaphragm automatically, without you thinking about it, constantly has got you breathing is because of carbon dioxide levels in your blood. Carbon dioxide is a natural byproduct of being alive, and it's poison. It'll kill you just as fast as carbon monoxide if you don't breathe. And anger is a byproduct. It's an emotional waste product of being alive on this fallen planet. And you and I are designed by God with a need to exhale that emotional waste product to God, to blow off those waste products emotionally, and then to inhale the love and truth and grace of God, and to have an exchange. And that's what the Psalms are all about. And that's exactly what God wants you to learn how to do. That's the swimming lesson. I've got a little more to say, but I'm not going to say it. Instead, I'm going to open this up for questions or comments. You feel free to disagree with me. You think I'm all wet? Say so. Pat Sokol will beat you up. I won't, but he said, I will defend you. He did not say that, so you go ahead. Feel free. I mean, really. I don't have it all figured out, but this I think is an accurate picture of the reality of the swimming lessons that we got to learn now. I want to give you one last thought here, and then we're going to open up for questions. And how are we going to do the questions? How are we going to do that? Grab handheld. Yes, thank you. Yes, of course. Very good. That's better. Okay, I got one last thing to tell you from my notes. If you're struggling with depression right now, you probably feel like you lead a wasted life. I want to give you a little something that I think is true. If you struggle with depression right now, that doesn't condemn you to a wasted life at all. Not at all. You're in good company. The magnificent authors, Hans Christian Andersen and Mark Twain, struggled with chronic depression. The awesome composers, George Frederick Handel and Tchaikovsky, just to name a few, struggled with depression on and off through their whole lives. The guy who painted the Sistine Chapel, Michelangelo, struggled with depression on and off his whole life long. The most influential statesman of the last century, Winston Churchill, struggled with depression on and off through his whole life. American history, Abraham Lincoln, struggled with depression on and off his whole life long. You are not a reject if you are struggling with depression. By all means, I think you ought to learn these swimming lessons and practice them. And it's not entirely that simple. You're not just an emotional, spiritual being. You're also a physical being. And you might swim real well, but biologically have some weights tied to your ankles. And you might need a life preserver your whole life long. And I don't think there's shame in that either. But I don't want to have happen to you and I what happened to the Jews, where God's one charge against them was, you cry on your bed, but you refuse to come to me. That's how to offend God. That's how to displease Him. Let's have some questions. We got a few minutes, 5, maybe 10. Any questions at all? Now, what should I do? You want me to turn this thing off? This thing off? Can't hear you. Good. 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 Great. Good. Okay. All right.
I've got the wireless with me, so just raise your hand if you're on the floor, and I'll come to you.
Very good.
I actually don't have a question. I have a statement for.
You also, can you give me a little mic here? Is this good? You also have a very attractive head. Let me just say that.
Thank you. You inspire it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
No, I have a feeling, I don't know where Pat is. There he is. He's probably wishing you were here a week ago. Just yesterday, I took an hour of his time on this subject that I was dealing with some anger. And he said the exact same thing. And the weird thing was I knew this all along. I go to God in anger all the time. But for some reason this past week, I didn't want to. I held it in. And I was feeling depression. But as soon as Pat reminded me that I can go to God with whatever, I've been feeling a little better this week. Or this past 2 days. And I want to say you're right on the button. I ain't going to question you. I ain't going to
very wise man. Very. Well, you're breathing again.
Yes.
And it doesn't. You could turn purple from not breathing in a little while, and then if you breathe again, it doesn't take that long to get back on your feet from normal physical respiration. And there's a certain degree of parallel with regard to emotional health as well. Thanks.
Welcome.
Now, if nobody has a question, we do. Good, great, all righty.
I've got a medical question.
Medical question, all right.
I am dealing with a young person who has been advised by her psychiatrist, and since you have a medical background before you became a pastor, she's being advised to consider electroshock therapy for her depression.
How old is she?
24. And I'd just like your opinion if you have one to give.
Well, that's a very hard thing. That electroshock therapy should be a last resort, and it is. I would do it. Medication's not working. I would do it, and I'll tell you why. It'll mess up her short-term memory, not her long-term memory, and that side effect is not permanent. It's like rebooting your computer. That's what electroshock therapy is. I hope that isn't too coarse. That's what it is. Everything that goes on in your mind is electrical. Every thought is an electrical impulse. We are fearfully and wonderfully made. It's rebooting the computer. It's a life preserver, probably, and maybe they're running out of ideas. I would probably do it. That's a dangerous thing for me to say, knowing so little about your situation. But broadly speaking, it's not something to be afraid of. You don't remember it. They give you a paralyzing agent so that the rest of your body doesn't contract.